Welcome to Season 2 of the Fraud Files Unleashed, where true fraud investigations meet captivating storytelling. I'm Austin, a seasoned fraud fighter with over 8 years of experience in both law enforcement and banking. Join me on a first-hand journey through real cases, offering insights into the dangers and intricacies of fraud. Whether you're a fellow fraud fighter or just eager to learn more about fraud prevention, I invite you to tune in. Brace yourself for a mix of knowledge, humor, and plenty of coffee. Let's uncover the secrets of fraud together. Season 2, Episode 7, Tracking a Runaway Senior Citizen. It's time to mix things up. When I was a criminal fraud investigator, we did a lot more than just arresting fraudsters. We also pretended to look cool, and we told corny jokes. Well, maybe that was just me. In all seriousness, though, we often assisted with other investigative units when any high-priority incidents took place. So sometimes we assisted with homicide investigations, suspicious deaths, or in this case, we assisted with tracking down an elderly runaway who was considered to be at risk due to his dementia diagnosis. Fraud investigators are far more versatile than you may think. Sometimes, the easiest way to track down anyone, regardless of the reason, is to follow the money and look at their spending habits. However, tracking down endangered runaways always seemed to be a challenge. Their spending patterns were often irrational, they are often confused and scared, and sometimes they'd drive through multiple states before needing to fill up on gas again. Not only is this terrifying as an investigator, but most importantly, this is a horrifying time for family members who are desperately wanting their loved ones to return home safely. Let's go ahead and crank up that time machine and dive right in. I believe I worked this fraud file back in 2019. Wait a sec. How did I start working this case in the first place? Well, unlike my usual method of triaging fraud cases out of a giant queue, missing and endangered persons cases came to us a little bit differently. The Altamont Springs Police Department had a stellar team of property crime investigators, and they would also work major crime cases or anything involving missing, endangered people. Anytime a patrol officer ends up on the scene of a high-priority call needing immediate investigative resources, they would contact our on-call investigator, and they would get to work. My specialty was fraud, so anytime there was a need to trace money, they would call me out to work some magic. I guess you could say I was known as a freak in the sheets. Spreadsheets, that is. On an ordinary weekday, on an ordinary afternoon, I ended up getting a random call from one of our investigators. Honestly, I thought he was just calling to talk some smack or crack some jokes, as we often did. But sadly, he was working a high-priority investigation. These are the type of investigations that meant you dropped anything and everything you were doing. That's right, no afternoon coffee run today. My brother in blue started to fill me in on what was going on. Apparently, our patrol officers were out on scene with an elderly female named Janice, who was reporting her husband, Murphy, missing. Of course, I've changed these names a bit for privacy purposes. And no, this wasn't some weird murder mystery story that you'd see on Lifetime. But her husband had been diagnosed with dementia, and he took the car and started driving. Janice did not realize he had even left, and she had last seen him about an hour ago. Janice was gardening in the backyard, and she thought her beloved husband was inside watching TV. In a state of panic, she ended up calling the police department, hoping we could quickly locate Murphy. Patrol officers and our general investigations team had already scoped out the area with no luck. The first step in situations like this was to put out a Florida Silver Alert. And thankfully, my buddy had already handled this. A Silver Alert is used to help assist with locating missing persons suffering from dementia or other similar deterioration. This information gets distributed to local law enforcement agencies, and oftentimes the public is notified as well. Murphy was last seen driving his red Buick, so his vehicle tag information was also included with this Silver Alert. So, if a law enforcement officer ran his vehicle tag, they would know that Murphy needs help. Well, the Silver Alert is done, so what in the world is a fraud investigator supposed to help with here? Don't doubt the power of tracing money, my friends. Murphy may have had no cell phone on him, so we couldn't track that. But he did have his wallet with him. My brother in blue called to see if I could somehow help track his cards so we could potentially locate poor Murphy. I told my friend, say less, but I'll need 30 minutes to get the ball rolling. Then I immediately hung up the cell phone and drove to get some coffee. I mean, come on. You think I could really crack this case without caffeine? No way. After grabbing my lukewarm cup of coffee from a cheap and sketchy gas station, I sped off to Janice's house. It was always a lot easier to get my information straight from the source. After arriving on scene, I met with Janice and reassured her that we would do everything we could to locate Murphy as soon as possible. Janice was visibly upset and distressed, but her kindness prevailed as she offered me a cold drink as I sat in her living room. Janice told me that Murphy had some cash and 2 credit cards in his wallet which he took with him. One of these cards was with Capital One, and I can't even remember where the other card was issued from at this point. Thankfully, I had an awesome contact at Capital One. Anytime we dealt with priority cases, our success was almost always dependent on our connections. Networking as a fraud investigator is one of the most important things you can do. I asked Janice to see some of Murphy's bank statements and his credit card number information, so I could try to work some magic here. She logged me into their online banking so I could take a look. It's important to look at bank statements at times like this in order to establish normal patterns. Where does Murphy spend his money at? Does he frequent certain gas stations? What is normal activity for Murphy? When is the last time he used his card? Murphy was a creature of habit, but he also didn't usually go driving without Janice. His Capital One card was primarily used for gas, and he almost always filled up at a Chevron about 10 minutes away from his house. Sadly, Murphy hadn't used his card in the past few days, and he had no new transactions pending at the moment. I excused myself from the room and called my Capital One contact for an assist. When my contact picked up the phone, I said, "Hey man, you got the goods?" "Hey, what's crackin', homie?" "Hey man, have I ever told you that you're my favorite?" Okay. I don't know what I said exactly, but I definitely buttered him up. I needed some serious help. At that point in time, several institutions had the ability to help law enforcement in times of serious need like this. Essentially, they could provide us with notifications in real time when transaction attempts were made, so we could safely locate an endangered person. Murphy met the criteria at the time, and so they got me hooked up with notifications on my phone. All I needed to do was get a legal request signed off on and forward it via email. Done deal. Thank goodness. This real-time notification gave us a huge advantage, and all we could do at this point was hope for the best. Seconds turned into minutes, and minutes turned into hours. I waited in Janice's living room patiently, waiting for something to happen. I felt helpless. I had done everything I could at this point, but it just didn't feel like enough. Crazy enough, Janice and I talked a lot during this time, and I just so happened to go to school with her grandchildren. Small world, right? What are the chances of that? Now, I felt an even greater burden to help find Murphy. I mean, come on, I went to school for several years with his grandchildren. I knew they all had to be worried sick at this point. Holy smokes. After hours of waiting, it looks like Murphy was running out of gas. I just got notified that Murphy's card was swiped and declined at a Chevron gas station down in South Florida. Weird. Why was it declined? Oh, that was just another attempt. So we went ahead and dialed up the local police department and asked for a unit to be sent to the gas station as a priority. And we briefly filled them in on the situation. As we hung up with dispatch, I received yet another declined transaction attempt. Looks like the PIN was entered incorrectly. Was Murphy not remembering his PIN? I mean, that's possible. But what if his card was stolen? Was Murphy okay? There was no telling at this point. But if Murphy needs gas and can't fill up, then hopefully he's still at the gas station when the officers arrive. A few moments later, we got a call from the officer on scene, and there was no sign of Murphy at the gas pumps. But the gas station clerk did say that someone matching Murphy's description walked inside to use the bathroom, and they left in a red 4-door vehicle by themselves. Well, that was somewhat of a relief. But Murphy still hasn't been caught yet. He is a slippery fella that just seems to be very difficult to catch. Finally, after another 30 minutes or so, they had found Murphy nearby on the side of the highway. Why did he pull over on the highway? That's because he completely ran out of gas. He didn't have a single drop left in the tank. I have never been so happy to hear someone ran out of gas. The primary detective working this case ended up driving several hours to go pick up Murphy, and he drove him back home to Janice. I left before Janice was reunited with Murphy, but the relief on her face before I left her house put me at ease. I have a family member dealing with dementia, and it's such a horrible thing to witness. Watching your loved one forget who you are, or watching them get so confused that they run away, is a hard pill to swallow. I got into fraud investigations to help protect people who are being manipulated or abused by fraudsters. But occasionally, I was able to play a small part in helping locate missing people. Fighting fraud isn't always just about stopping the bad guys. Sometimes, it's about helping the good guys. And there you have it, fraud fighters. Tracking money can be used to solve all sorts of investigations. Join us next time as we delve into the world of financial intrigue, exposing the tricks of the trade while sharing a laugh or two. Remember, not all heroes wear capes, some wear accountant badges and detective hats. This podcast is presented by Fraud Warfare. If you are interested in supporting us through promoted ads, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Please consider sharing this podcast with a friend or family member, and be sure to leave us a review on your podcasting platform of choice. You can also support us financially through our buymeacoffee.com/fraud warfare page. 100% of these funds go towards improving the quality of our podcasts and, of course, some coffee. Thanks for listening.